If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Ivy.
So we went to Point Pleasant a couple days ago. It was Ivy's first time down there. What did you think?
It was weird, but it's pretty much what I would expect from West Virginia, from my own experience with it.
Because where did you live at? You lived in Charlotte?
Morgantown.
Oh, Morgantown. Okay.
So I went down in Motown.
Wow.
That's where West Virginia University is.
Still WSU, whatever. Same thing. Yep. Yeah, it's not a bad town. I mean, it's poor. You know, they got a lot of poverty. There's a lot of stuff that they're missing there, but everybody's super nice. What'd you think of Kathy?
I loved her. Gammy.
Yes! Gammy.
You call me either one.
Gammy, Kathy, she's so sweet. Yes, I've met this lady down there, guys, and she is amazing. She seems to know everybody in town, so she's been a great resource, but we stopped in and visited her, and she just was happy. I mean, she was happy.
West Virginia's version of "Come on in."
Yeah, that's West Virginia's "Come on in, lady." Yeah, she was real sweet. It was good to see her again, but yeah. So like we went down there and we had some pretty specific goals in mind, but you know, the thing is that when you when you live your life listening to the universe and following the universe's direction, then when it talks to you, you have to speak. Or when it talks to you, you have to listen. And, you know, this time just wasn't the time to do what we had set out to do. And that's okay. It happens. But, so, I guess the simplest way to put what the plan was to go down there and evoke some type of, I don't want to say spirit, but some type of energy. So my hypothesis, and I haven't really publicly come out, I mean, I've told people what the documentary is about, but I haven't made like an official statement on what it's about. But what I conclude with what the Mothman is that I think that the Mothman is an ultra-terrestrial being. I think it's some type of energy that lives on a different dimension that we can't fully comprehend. And I think these energies come out to us in these weird, obscure phenomena. And now I'm not saying that I think all cryptids are ultra-terrestrial, because I don't believe that. I think that some of them are still pretty, you know, they're biological in what we see as biological. But I think the Mothman is one of those experiences, which is why it's so obscure. But so my thought process is if you can contact spirits and you have a way to do that, why can't we use those same methods to reach out to these other creatures? So, like I said, my intention going down there was not necessarily to contact spirits. Now, this is hard to explain to all the listeners that don't know the entire story the whole way through, which is, I guess, why you're going to have to watch the documentary, guys. Sorry. But, like Injured Cold, who some people think could be the Mothman, Tanya Derenberger, which is Woodrow Derenberger's daughter, Woodrow Derenberger, which is the guy who was lifelong friends with Injured Cold, Tanya says that Indrid died. And so it's like, okay, so if I focus on trying to contact Indrid, but she's also said that it is a very real possibility that he's faked his own death. And so it's like, either way, Indrid is some type of higher being than we are. If I use these same methods to reach out as you would to, say, a spirit, why couldn't you reach Indrid? Why can't you reach whatever energy there is, you know, of the Mothman? So we go to West Virginia, and we did all the usual touristy stuff. You know, it's always fun to start there. And then, you know, kind of get you in the mood. And then we went down to the TNT area, and we went down to the legal bunker. It's a weird area. I'm being told by all the locals that you can't just go walking around down there. You know, that they've all said that. And, you know, for one reason or another, that's what they say. And so, you know, we decided to go down to the legal bunker, the one that you're not trespassing at. It's owned by the museum. And but before we even got down there, the first stop that we had made was at the Silver Bridge Memorial. And we're there. And I've been collecting feathers from Point Pleasant for a while and making these voodoo jars for my coffin shelf because I'm fucking weird. And so I've been collecting feathers. And Point Pleasant, I always end up getting a lot down there. And so around the Silver Bridge Memorial, there's a bunch of feathers, and we were looking at the plants, and you noticed that, well, you had the two plants that they had planted there, you had both of them.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at the plants, and like right beside your foot on the ground is a dead bird. And we're like, oh, great, wonderful. You know, and then we stopped by the cafe or whatever, and we're just kind of, you know, taking turns in and out of the cafe and just hanging out, whatever. And you walked down and you saw that
dead mouse.
That dead, yeah, it was the big dead rat, yeah, on the window. And so, you know, we saw two dead animals, and this threw me off my game. So when you're doing any type of like spirit work or channeling or anything like that, like you need to be 100%. Like you need to be on top of what you're doing. You need to be in touch with yourself. You need to be calm. And, you know, I talked to Steve about it, and I said that. I'm like, you know, I wonder if these dead animals are some type of sign. And he didn't. No, I told him I was worried about the dead animals, and he didn't really seem to react. But then again, he's not, although he's open, he's not really into it like that, you know, so I don't think he thought anything of it. So we get down there, and first and foremost, we go into the bunker, because again, Ivy's never been down there, so we just kind of explore, make sure nobody else is in there, whatever. And I set up my camera, I pull out I've got these sage sticks, I pull out my sage sticks, I light it. Steve's just kind of exploring the area. I'm trying to get into the headspace, and then two people walk up. And, you know, for me, that was enough to just say, you know what, this isn't it. And so, you know, that was it. You know, that was all of it. So Ivy felt some type of way about a certain area down there in the TNT area, and decided, well, let's go try to explore that. Now, I'm very nervous because, again, I've been told over and over again not to just go exploring these places. I have before I knew that information. I've been, you know, inside of a couple of the bunkers. I found one that I believe still has munitions in it. And, which, you know, of course, again, if you watch the documentary, you'll see that. But anyway, so, you know, we go down there, and Ivy goes kind of exploring this little area, whatever, and she's like, well, you know, let's go ahead and go down here. So I get out of the car, and I'm walking up there, and we saw the caterpillar. And then we saw the other caterpillar. Was that a caterpillar or was it a centipede? Do you know what the difference is?
It wasn't fuzzy.
It wasn't fuzzy, no, but it was leggy. It was a leggy boy.
Yeah, but it was big.
It was big.
It was thick.
Yes. It was very thick, but we saw the very sweet, cuddly one, and then we saw the big one. And, you know, it was kind of weird because they were like the fuzzy one was white and fuzzy, and then the other one was black and not fuzzy, and it was rough, right? So I didn't really think much of this, but you had a lot of experiences with the wildlife down there. Well, we all saw the monarch butterflies together quite a bit. And then you walked down that path by yourself, and you saw a couple different butterflies. You saw like a black one twice, and then a yellow one.
Black and blue one.
Yeah.
Well, that black and blue one, it was like, you know, I feel like if I was there long enough, that I would have been able to like hold it. Cause it would like come closer to me.
All the butterflies were real friendly. They just did not give a fuck. Yeah.
Well, another weird thing about that caterpillar was is, you know, Aaron and Michael, my roommates, they went to John Bryan, and he was telling me about this caterpillar that they saw that was white and fuzzy and had these like, I was like, that's weird because we've seen one, And I showed him a picture, and he's like, yeah, that's it. So
wow.
That was
well,
weird.
so the weird... so another weird thing... That is really weird, because I've got a weird story about the caterpillars. So somebody was... I went on a date yesterday, and, I'm on the date, and I'm telling him about my documentary and what I'm working on. I'm like, yeah, that's about the Mothman. And he's like... And he decides to make a stupid joke. And it was one I'd never heard before, surprisingly, because I see all the Mothman memes all the time, and I have all the Mothman stuff, and, so anyway, he said, so the Mothman, he's like, didn't he used to be a caterpillar boy? And, I laughed about it, and then I get in the car after the date, and I think about that stupid joke that he told, and I'm like, wait a minute, we saw 2 caterpillars yesterday. So, maybe, in some type of weird way, that's some type of energy that we called. It just manifested in the form of literal wildlife because we didn't push for anything else. And so I thought that was pretty wild. But that one had what you call it, a fairy fountain. Well, people call it a fairy fountain. The one bunker had it. And we tried to get to the other side. So the bunkers, the way that the TNT area is set up, it's kind of like a square where the roads are. And the bunkers, they're just kind of in these weird little inlets in the woods, and you'll just kind of park at one of the inlets, and you'll walk straight through, and eventually you'll happen upon a bunker. And if you keep going, there's another. You keep going, there's another. And so they're everywhere out there. But they go straight through to the other side, the other main road. At least that's what it shows on the map. So we've looked at this with like the satellite map, and it's supposed to go straight through. And we were just using Google Maps, and, it showed, like, a named road was one of these roads. It was just on the other side. So we were going to try to enter the bunker from the other side, and you couldn't get back there. There was, like, 3 different paths that you can take back into this area, and they were all blocked. You could not get back there. And what Steve was noticing when he was looking on the map was that it looked like the top was blown off, of these bunkers, and maybe they were just open. And there was also a house that we had seen that didn't have a roof at all. So me and Steve were kind of wondering if these weren't the ones that blew up a couple years ago. So we definitely wanted to get back there, but you can't. So, and then if you go from the other side, you get stopped because you have that fairy fountain there. So I wonder if that's not...
Well, even
intentional?
Just on the other side, it didn't really keep going. It actually went to the left and was this big open area with all the chopped trees. So it's like between... And there wasn't much of a distance between the 2 bunkers. Right. But that was a big open place. So it's like... But you also couldn't go in on
the other side. Right, you couldn't get through. Right. There's no way for you to get to the ones that exploded. At least not without some type of... Because you can kind of hop over the fairy fountain, and then I don't know how far you can get from there. But, like, that water is contaminated as fuck. So, like, you don't want to touch it. Not unless you're properly geared. At least that was definitely my biggest concern. I'm like, I am not touching that water. That's gross.
Those chopped trees were in water too.
They were, and that was really odd. I mean, maybe they had some rain recently, and maybe they had a little bit of flooding. I don't know, but that was really weird. But the whole water is kind of like a swamp area. But you could see on the satellite map where all that water is at, and then like kind of around it. So you would have to go out to where one of those blocked off, parts are. And you would have to get out of the car, and you'd have to walk to it. But then you run the risk of, you're on property you're not supposed to be. Whatever the hell it is that everybody's so goddamn afraid of. Like, they're very serious about you not just walking around that area. And I don't understand why. I mean, so I guess my next step is to get a hold of one of the locals and ask, hey, why can't we go back here? So, I mean, it was very weird. But that's definitely more of... why I have Anne. I'm gonna put Anne on the case. I'm gonna have her try to figure it out because she will, and I'm excited to see what she comes up with as far as that goes.
We'll have to start calling her Karen.
I don't think she'll appreciate that.
Only when she's on the case.
Put
So
Karayan on
what'd
the
you
case.
find today, Karen?
Karayan. Yeah, she loves that kind of shit. She's all about that TNT area. So it wasn't, even though I didn't, and that's kind of how this always happens every time I go down there. Even though I didn't accomplish what I went down there to do, I still learned more. And that's something that you had mentioned was previously I had done that tarot reading for myself, and you pointed out that that's what it said. I needed to learn something, and so maybe I'm just not ready to do that yet. I mean, maybe there's more information that I need. Maybe I need to sit down and talk to Tanya and see, what's going on with Injured Cold, and, if he's resurfaced, and I don't know. I'm not sure what it is, but I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this documentary is that I don't go out to these places with any sense of direction at all. It's just all built into the synchronicities, and the synchronicities show you the way. I mean, they do. They show you where exactly I need to be, where I need to go, and I can't ignore it. At this point, and so it is kind of weird. It's really hard to work on a project that's like that. Like when I look at all of like my indie film friends and people that are actual filmmakers and directors and stuff like that, like they sit down when you're making a movie, like exactly what you're doing. Like you have your story, you have it all laid out, and you're like, this is my goal, this is my end game here. I need to film this today, and this isn't like that. It's about just kind of, again, letting it take you places. Now there is investigation involved, and that's where most of the synchronicities happen, is within the investigation itself.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
But because, none of this is, kind of just like we were talking about last week, none of it's anything that you can just Google and easily find out. You have to search and dig and ask, and, sometimes it's boots on the ground, door to door asking, and it's just the way it is. So, I mean, I guess that was the shift. Originally when I was asked to work on this documentary with the original director, it's really all kind of strange. He planned on just going and making a documentary just like every Mothman documentary. It's about the Mothman. It's about the weird town of Point Pleasant. But, he pointed out that Point Pleasant was just kind of a really unfortunate place with a lot of bad shit that happened. So his idea was that he was kind of following the Curse of Cornstalk theory. And I never really gave that much attention until kind of recently. But, because he mentioned that they had all these unfortunate events happen. And then the synchronicity started for me personally, and I would just keep finding stuff, and I'd bring it to his attention, and I'd be like, look, we need to talk about this because this is bigger than just the Mothman, and although he agreed that it was bigger than the Mothman, because he already has a YouTube career, he was worried about putting his career on the line and sounding crazy, I guess. And so he didn't want to have it be that. And so, then the world happened again, and, here we are now. We don't work together on the documentary. Now it's strictly mine, and I can do anything that I want with it, and and I don't have a choice but to follow the messages. And but it's fine, it really is fine. I'm pretty much, so basically what I'm doing, the easiest way to put it is that I am following in the footsteps of like John Keel and his research, and what he thought these things were. It's just that he knew that they were all connected, but he never found the missing piece of the puzzle. And a lot of these people, there's more than just Keel. He just happens to be one of my personal favorites. But a lot of these people, the researchers that fall into these synchronicity rabbit holes, they never find the answer. They never do. And, you know, we know that because they die. And they're not here anymore. And guess what? We still haven't figured it out. So when I originally decided that that's what my documentary was going to be about, I had to accept the fact that I may never find what I'm looking for. I might not. It might not be something that I'm capable of doing. But the best that I can do is maybe find another breakthrough in the case, and once I die, somebody else picks it back up, and then they continue. But something's happening. Something big is happening right now that a lot of people are overlooking. It's like synchronicity has become its own virus, and it has started to spread into this community. You know, that's the weird thing, is that you usually don't have, like in this kind of work, you don't have ghost hunters and ufologists and cryptozoologists all working together as one. They all have their separate things. So the ghost hunters are strictly working with the spirits, ufologists strictly working with the aliens, and you got the cryptozoologists strictly working with the cryptids. And none of them really come together, except for people like John Keel and, you know, and whatnot. So it's starting to grow, though, now. Now there's all these people that are entertaining the idea that all of these things are probably connected somehow. And that is, it's pretty amazing, actually. What's his name? John Tenney. He posted something on Twitter earlier, and he posted how he had been blocked by most of UFO Twitter or something like that because they would talk about aliens, but he would also talk about, you know, magic and spirituality and all these things, and they'd be like, wow, that's too crazy even for us, you know. But now all of a sudden, all these people on UFO Twitter are starting to entertain the idea that maybe there is something to that. Maybe these things are connected, and it's actually been quite a drama for a minute. Another one of my cryptozoologist friends had made a post about how, you know, cryptids don't need to have some type of extra step to them in order to be fun. They're already fun enough. So, like, they don't need to be these ultra-terrestrial beings in order to make them interesting. And it's like, and I agree with that. But I don't necessarily think all of them are the same thing. Like I said, I think that there's some that's biological. Like, I don't think Bigfoot's ultra-terrestrial at all. I think that that's just an animal that we haven't, well, I know it's something that we just haven't really discovered. It exists. We talked about that already. You know, I think that some of them are actual animals, and I think cryptozoology does still have its place as a science. However, we do have weird shit like the fucking Mothman. Where does that fall into? Which one is that? Is that spiritual? Is that an alien? Is that a cryptid? It's probably all three. You know, realistically, all of it somehow works together in tandem to create this Mothman thing. And so, you know, but it is interesting, and it is a lot of fun to see that. So since I started working on the Mothman thing, right before I went to the Mothman Festival, it was this big event. It was the day before we went. I was telling my boyfriend at the time, you know, I looked at him and I just told him, you know, it's a big weekend. I had known, I had this build up for myself for a minute that I was going to go through a change. I knew that it was coming. I just felt it coming. And I told him regarding the weekend, it was a big weekend. Well, we go out that weekend to the Mothman Festival in West Virginia, and we happened to experience more synchronicities than I ever have in my entire life. And in one single shot. And, I didn't realize at the time that it was called synchronicity. I didn't know what it was. It was just, to me, it was just weird shit happening. And, you know, so that happened. And, you know, from that time going forward, I was having weird moments of knowing that things would happen, just being very intuitive and just knowing. And, you know, there was nothing to it. There was no science behind it. It was just, I know that this is going to happen. And then it would. And so I'm like, okay. You know, and then since then I've had some greater events happen. But, you know, with all that, I'm like, all right. So I'm also at the same time exploring more of my spirituality. And, you know, come to find out, I'm like, oh, well, this makes sense. There's a term for this. I'm clairvoyant. I'm intuitive. And, so I kind of start accepting that about myself. And then it ended up progressing. And I started having, like, I don't even want to call them auditory or visual experiences, because they're not. They are, but they're not. Then I started receiving messages. And, and it started, I was taken to a supposedly haunted place that I didn't know anything about, fucking 10 hours away from my home state. And I knew everything that happened there. I was very aware of what happened, and I think something was trying to reach out to me, and it scared the shit out of me. So it was horrifying. And, and then after that, somebody's family member died, and the family member, I saw them at my house, and they talked to me. And so I've been fighting this for a long time, because I've never believed in ghosts before. I've never entertained that. I've been to so many, like, ghost hunting is all I used to do. Me and my friends did a bunch of drugs, and we went ghost hunting, and we never saw shit, and it was never anything. And so, it was not something that I ever knew about. And then in order for me to accept that there's ghosts, then I have to accept that there's some type of afterlife. So then that, fucks my whole worldview of religious experiences and things like that. So it's still very much something that I'm working on to this day. But I'm slowly accepting the fact that I'm also a medium. And it's weird to say that, because it makes me feel insane to say that. It doesn't, it doesn't feel right. I mean, because, you're told your entire life that stuff like that is crazy, and it's wrong, and it's weird, but it's like, it's not something that you could really explain to somebody until it happens to them. It's just like synchronicity. And, you can't explain a synchronicity to someone. It's just something that you feel and something that you just know. So how the hell am I going to translate all that into a documentary? What am I going to do there? And, I don't, like I said, I don't really understand the science behind it, but it definitely makes sense. Everything that has been happening to me in my life recently, it all makes a lot of sense. They say when your third eye opens, it's extremely painful, and you're faced with everything that you've ever faced your entire life. And that's exactly what I've been going through. And it's like, so of course, right now I'm my most vulnerable. Everybody knows that I'm super depressed and, out of touch with who I typically am. So why would anybody even believe that I am that way anyway? Because I've already got all the makings of a crazy person right now, so.
I mean, we all do.
I guess I'm lucky enough to hang out with a bunch of weirdos. Right, because everybody else is just like, okay, well, yeah, I can see it. You're a Cancer. It makes sense. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I mean, I don't know. That's where I'm at with things. So now I'm trying to use this to my advantage to contact ultra-terrestrial beings, and and I think I can. And I think that's what makes all of this different from, years ago, or, in the 70s when they were really, in the 60s and 70s where all this research was really big back then, was when they really started talking about these types of things. And I think that people are more open to the idea now that, first of all of these things exist, and that all of these things can be related somehow. So, we'll see. I don't know. But you got some gifts. Talk about your gifts. That's something we don't talk about a lot on here. The fact that you do the tarot reading, and that's your thing. Now, everybody can read tarot, technically, but yours is different from just anybody else reading tarot. I mean, how would you say that it's different from?
Well, everybody's style of reading is different, and for different reasons.
Like the professionals and down to the beginners.
Yeah, and I mean, you could go see a beginner and get 1,000,000 times more information than you would somebody that's been doing it for 30 or 40 years. That's the difficult part about it, because, once you think you know something, you really don't. Like, you just know that part.
Yeah.
And there's just so much more. It's kind of like how you were talking about, you know, the Mothman and, like, you know, being able to, like, get a person that studies aliens, somebody that studies spirits or demons or, you know, whatever. We don't know if he's a combination of all three. Yeah. Or a combination of two or whatever.
Something totally different that we don't even know about yet.
Or he could, you know, be whatever the fuck he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just this weird thing that, you know, our ego is like our worst enemy because our ego will tell us that we know so much more. And the minute our mind tells us that we know so much more is the minute we don't know anything at all.
Yeah.
You know, you think because you've stumbled across something that you're somehow at a higher level. You know, whatever. I don't know. The ego is a weird thing. It's different for everybody. Yeah. But for me, with my tarot practice, I just allow whatever is to happen. Yeah. And through that, I've channeled individual people, like loved ones that have passed on. So, like, medium.
A type of mediumship.
You know, and for me, that was really weird. I remember the first time it happened to me, I was reading for this person who I knew, but I didn't really know. Like, you know, like, I've seen them out, I've hung out with them, I've, you know, got drinks with them, but, like, I didn't know, like, you know, where they went to school, or where they grew up, or how long they lived in Dayton, or anything like that. It was just kind of like, you know, we knew the same people. Well, I ended up giving him a reading, and it was, like, the first time, like, we'd actually, like, hung out, and it was just the weirdest thing, because his mom came to me, and you know, it being my first time, I had never experienced anything like that, so I was just like, I don't know what's happening. And, like, I told him, I was like, you know, it might sound crazy, but there's somebody that's reaching out to you, and I feel like it's your mother. And, like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. And he told me that she had passed on, and, you know, he got some closure from it. You know, I think there was still a lot that he needed to do on his part. And, you know, because when it comes to, like, a mediumship or even any kind of channeling, it's kind of like how we have different, like, abilities. You know, some are more tapped into certain abilities than others, or, you know, have a different way of seeing things or a different way of expressing things. So when you are doing any kind of mediumship, I could potentially see, I don't know, let's just say a mountain. Yeah. And for me, that means, you know, grandmother. Right. You know, but if you see a mountain, that could mean something entirely different to you, because it's how you communicate. It's how that person has to communicate through you. So for any basic dialogue to come through, whatever is trying to come through can only speak through your experience. Yeah. So if you haven't experienced something, or you don't understand something, you know, it's probably not going to use that for a method, unless it's something that you need to learn. Yeah. Unless that's the moment when you learn about it. And that's the really interesting thing, is because it really gets the cogs turning in your mind of, you know, like, wow, this makes so much sense. Like, how did I not realize this before? You know, so it's like that same thing can be kind of explained through the cards as well. So, you know, like, certain imagery might mean something to me than it would mean to you. And that's why it's, you know, some beginners can give you more information than an experienced reader, because everybody perceives things differently, everybody communicates differently. So it just really all depends on the individual that is conducting the reading, that is being the medium, that is channeling, or, you know, whatever.
And it is always interesting how it works out, because like when I sent you that one reading or whatever, and you know, I pretty much had read what you had said. Well, you know what your perception of was, well, except you had a different take on it, which is not. I don't know how to explain it. It was the same thing. It was the same story, just told a different way. And so, you know, because of that different perception, I was able to see it differently than I had even originally saw it. I mean, granted, it was still very significant the way that I had seen it, but there was just added significance to it, you know, because I don't know why, because you had the different, like I said, you had the same story, just told in a different way. And so you know, that is always interesting. But I think that's why people, you know, when you get into this type of stuff, like I've got certain tarot readers and stuff that I like to watch on YouTube because they resonate with me. I don't know, because they all say the same thing. If you watch all the videos, they are, you know, and you compare, like if you just do your tarot scopes and you compare, they all say the same thing. It's just that they say it differently. And so,
well, the easiest way to kind of put that is basically there's 78 cards in a traditional tarot deck. All of those 78 cards can apply to you right now.
Right.
Period, point blank.
Right.
Whether it's a past, present, or future experience,
right,
you have some kind of relation to it, no matter what.
Right.
And, you know, that's kind of where the special part of tarot comes in, is because, you know, it depends on what comes out. It depends on the reader's perception. It depends on the querent's perception. There's so many different things that come into play. So, you know, it's like one thing that I noticed like 2 years ago was a lot of times, like with different readings, like say somebody's doing like, you know, Capricorn tarot scope and Aquarius tarot scope and Aries tarot scope, and they all have like, we'll just say one card. Okay. And it's all, well, they'll all have one card that's the same.
Right.
So essentially what that is it's kind of like an archetypal energy. And that is the influence that is being like imposed. Not imposed, I don't know. It's the energy that is coming to us. It's the energy that we have to work with in that moment. But for each individual person, it's going to be different.
Right.
For each individual sign, it's going to be different.
Right.
And, you know, the natal chart all comes into play with that. But we have this common energy that we are all working with all the time. And, you know, with our different experiences being applied to that, we have this kind of opportunity to really work with each other and help each other, you know, sort out our issues. So it's like those cards that you pulled, you're going to have a perception, I'm going to have a perception, you know, and we both should be able to walk away with something.
Right. Yeah.
So we have this energy that is constantly around us and constantly ever changing. So it's like all these different energies within these cards kind of come up in different ways depending on their placements, depending on, you know, who is asking what, and you know, there's a lot that comes into play with that. And I feel like that it's very similar to, you know, from my experience, like mediumship or clairvoyancy, because it's personal development. So it's based off of you and your experience and what you know, and what you're willing to learn, what you're open to learn. I don't consider myself a medium. I don't consider myself a clairvoyant. I consider myself an intuitive. And I feel like, you know, some people might consider themselves a mediumship and not an intuitive, because they might have, you know, a different form of communication. You know, mediumship is just like, you know, connecting with, you know, I guess spirits or entities, demons,
right,
angels, whatever.
Something that's not us, right?
Well, actually, no. I think mediumship is specifically people that have passed on. If I'm not mistaken.
And it could be, like I said, I'm still learning. I don't know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not very aware. Now, I know that my first two significant experiences for me were dead people. And, like, you know, well, at least the first one, I would assume that's what it was. The second one, it's somebody that I know that died, so I know for sure that it's them. And
so was this, for you, was this something that was internal, or did you, like, externally have to talk about it?
What do you mean?
So, like, when you were experiencing it, did you feel like you had to speak on what you were experiencing? Or is it just something that you processed in your mind?
Well, so, like, so the first time it was like, I didn't understand what was happening. Like, I really wasn't aware. And then, you know, because I had someone with me that's like watching me go through this, you know, I really didn't have a choice but to respond, but it was just to simply respond. It wasn't like, even though I was responding to the person, that's all it was simply a response. And because, again, I really didn't understand what was happening, and I didn't know what was going on. It's so weird without actually talking about it. But I would have these really strong reactions in certain areas of the place that we were at. Again, we were at this hotel. Supposedly it used to be like, at first it was like a women's reformatory or something. It was like a women's place to, like, go and, like, learn a skill. And then after that it was this cancer hospital. And the guy claimed that he could cure cancer, and he would, like, have these cancer patients come, and he was, like, injecting them with, like, watermelon juice and all this other kind of fucked up shit. I mean, he couldn't cure cancer, but then he would, like, demand money from the family members and pretend that their family members were still alive and they were dead, you know. So, like, fucked up stuff. And then now it's a hotel. And so, I mean, it was not anything I knew about, but I would have these really strong reactions in those areas, and they were obvious to the person that was with me. And so, but I just, like, I know at that time I had like a outer body type of experience while still in my own body, and I could, like, see through another pair of eyes that was specifically coming for me. And it was scary. So, I mean, we ended up leaving, and it was weird because it was like the hotel had like 4 floors, and it's like the higher we got up the floors, the worse it got. And I'm like, I never made it to the 4th floor. I just could not. Like, we got to the stairs to get up to the next the next floor, and I could not go up there. And I'm like, I can't. And he's just like, okay. And then we leave, and, you know, before he starts telling me, because he would make note, I would start freaking out in an area, and he's like, wow, you don't even know this, but I'll tell you in the car about why this is important. And I'm like, okay. So before he even starts telling me any of this in the car, you know, all of a sudden I'm talking and I've got a lot to say about it. And, you know, I'm telling the stories, and I'm talking about the whole situation. And he's just like, wow, that's crazy, because, well, you're exactly right. That's exactly, you know, what happened here. And at least, you know, so as the legends go, you know, that's what they say. And so, it was, you know, at that point, yes, I did feel forced to talk about it. Now, the second time, and since then, I've been by myself, and, this particular, dead person, I still see him a lot, and he doesn't leave me alone. And, you know, so, but he'll talk to me, and he'll tell me weird things that don't matter, that he wants me to pass on to his people, and I don't talk to his people anymore. And so it's weird. And I've thought about writing a book about it. I've thought about it recently, because then it's like, you know what, because I don't want to overstep my bounds, because unfortunately, you know, the person in question that he wants me to talk to is an ex. And I don't want the ex to think that this is some type of weird ploy to try to win him back, because it's not. But at the same time, I feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I think that this person is not going to go away until I do the things that I need to do. So I feel like if I write a book about it, that gives the family the opportunity to decide if they want to pick up that book and they want to know. And so I've thought about it, but I'm undecided on that. And then, you know, I get the feeling. I have this feeling that happens when I'm going to receive, and most of the time I just completely block it off.
Is it like That's So Raven, where it's like,
yeah, yep. No.
I mean, it's different, but yeah,
it's different, but kind of, yeah. I mean, that's
like
the best.
That moment where you're like, oh god.
For me, it's like it's a physical response. Like, first of all, I get really like emotional, and like I'm usually like I cry. I'll start crying, or like I'm on the verge of tears, like, and it's just for no fucking reason at all. and then I don't feel good. I start feeling really nauseous. And then I break out in this weird sweat. And so, you know, I know what it is now. For a very long time, I did not know what it was. And I've had this happen in different places before. And so, you know, it happened one day when I'm sitting at home, just out of nowhere. And I'm like, you know what? I think I know what this is. Let me sit down. Let me focus on it. And, you know, I'm getting a message. Let me see what it is. And, you know, at that time, I received the message, and it wasn't, again, I had no reason to be verbal, I guess, because I was by myself. But I think it would be useful if if when this happened, I had other people around, or maybe if I had, you know, the forethought to start recording and then saying exactly, because I don't fully remember every detail of what I'm told afterwards, because I'm not here anymore. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Because when I channel, it's just like, you can tell I have essentially left my body. I'm still
out, right?
there.
You're mentally not there.
But like, if you see me, like if I'm doing a reading and I just like look somewhere and my gaze does not break, I'm channeling.
Yeah.
And it's weird, because in that moment, sometimes I don't even know what I just said. I don't remember it.
Right.
I don't have any kind of memory. I don't have any kind of like thought process, or like it just comes through and it's out my mouth. And then I come back and I have a person talking to me, and and then I have to kind of get up to speed. Mm-hmm. It's a really weird thing.
Like, I don't know if you've ever been under like twilight sleep anesthesia, but it's kind of like that. It's like you remember it, but you don't. It's like being really drunk. You remember it, but you don't. You know, it's one of those things. So I think it would help. But, you know, this time was different because I didn't have any visuals. It was just like strictly like words. I don't even know how to explain that much, but yeah, I literally received a message, and it's kind of like, maybe it's your own thoughts, but it's not, because you know that you're disconnected. And so, you know, again, you're kind of having a weird kind of out of body experience while this is happening. And it just comes in. So, I think it just depends. I have never, so that's one thing that I was looking into for the weekend, was that originally, and it's just my terminology's wrong. I've got a lot to learn about all this, but, you know, I was researching how to invoke spirits, because I'm like, well, this is what, you know, I need to find some type of ritual to do or something. And you know, so I'm looking up how to invoke spirits. Well, at that point in time, I learned that there's a big difference between invoking and evoking. When you invoke something, you are allowing yourself to become possessed, and you know, you're allowing that thing to use your body and take over your body. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. So I am going to evoke instead. And so I started, you know, researching that. Whereas evoking, you're just calling on those spirits to come to you rather than, you know, inside of you. So, I learned that there was a difference with that. So, but that helped me realize my regular that I see all the time, he's not being invoked, because I can see him. Like, I can communicate with him. I wouldn't say as me and you, or as, we are communicating right now, because it's not quite like that. But instead of him being, like, in my head, he's not. He's his own separate, being. And so, whereas, like, in the hotel experience, and then, I sat here at home and channeled here, it was more a part of me also than it was, like, a separate thing. And so, and that makes me wonder, then that makes me, because I know that the one person's dead, so it's like, if that person's dead, and I know that he is more of, his own entity, then does that mean that what I experience at the hotel and what I experience at home aren't dead people at all? Maybe they're these other beings that don't have any other way to communicate. I don't know.
I guess they could just present themselves differently.
They could. They definitely could.
Like I said, I don't really have much experience, but I do know, like, it happens for me, and it's almost different every time.
Yeah. Well,
I think it, kind of goes back to that whole thing of, they have to speak through your experience, what you're open and willing to learn and what you have learned, what but I also think that sometimes it's not necessarily even about that. It's just it's almost like they want somebody to talk to.
Well, so, yeah. I mean, the reason why I think most of the time, most of these occurrences are just beings beyond our realm of understanding, is because, so, like, the way that I explain ultra-terrestrials to people is that, the easiest way is I use my cartoon explanation. And that's that, okay, we are third dimensional, right? Everybody knows that. Our life is third dimensional. According to string theory, there's 10 dimensions. So, what's in the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth? So, we as third dimensional creatures, we watch a cartoon. And the cartoons are two dimensional. And so, and we're very aware of them. We are totally aware of their existence. We know that they're there. We can see them, and whatnot. And they don't know that we exist. And they can't see us. There are some people. So, okay, hold on. Wait a minute. Let me, hold on. Okay, so they're not aware of us, right? Until you have a cartoonist that goes and interrupts their world. Okay, so the cartoonist can take their pencil and they can erase their birthday cake that they have, and they can make it a giant broccoli. And all of a sudden, something strange has happened in their world, and instead of birthday cake, they have broccoli. The cartoonist can then draw the character itself, and he can draw that character to have the consciousness that we exist. So the cartoonist can create that fourth wall break, as we call it in our world, to make sure that the cartoon is aware of us. So the only way that the cartoon can have that power, though, is if the creature from the higher dimension can give it that power. So why would it be any different between us third dimensional creatures and the fourth dimensional creatures? So when we're talking about channeling and talking to things and stuff like that, well, why wouldn't they choose how they present themselves to us? They would choose the experience. They're the cartoonist. They've got the pencil. They've got full control. So they could control how we perceive them. So it makes sense to me to be able to use those same spiritual practices that we've been using for this, because again, it all seems very connected. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me that it is that way. And who knows, when we're talking about spirits and spiritual energy, that's one thing that people say when they talk about people dying. They've passed on to another plane of existence. You know, they've gone to the other side. They've gone, you know, they've done this. So, I mean, maybe when you die, because your energy moves, you're able to transcend to this other dimension. And then, therefore, you can come back and manipulate the reality of the lesser beings, I guess. That's my theory on it. I mean, I'm seeing where it goes. Now, granted, since I've worked on this documentary, my theory has changed a lot. But I think that I keep getting closer and closer. The one thing that has remained has been my belief system that these things are ultra-terrestrial. So, but I think they're all very similar. I think that, you know, you even talked about the ego earlier, and the ego is a very scientific thing. You know, we discovered the ego when we had, you know, when we were studying the mind and how it works. But funny, because ego is also a very spiritual thing. And so it's like, there it is again. There's that science and that spirituality going hand in hand. It's really not as far-fetched as some people think it is to think that they go together. You know, I mean, even with like, you know, the, well, just energy itself. Scientifically, we know energy is real. We know that, you know, energy can't be created nor destroyed. So obviously, I mean, we're built of energy. We die. Something happens to us, you know. And so, you know, but again, that's another example of science and spirituality coming together. You know, crystals are like that. You know, there's scientific evidence for how crystals work, and you know, but then there's that weird like gray area that you have that's, you know, then it starts getting a little too spiritual for the scientist, or you know, whatever, or a little too sciencey for the people, for the spiritualists. You know, so obviously there's some type of connection between the two. There absolutely has to be. I don't think that the one can exist without the other one. My goal is to bring them together and figure out how and where they connect exactly. What is it exactly? So, I mean, because channeling is a very real thing, whether you're doing it, whether you think it's just the universe and something that's divinely guided, whether you think it's dead people, you know, whether you think it's aliens. It's very real. Well, and that's another thing they say about these ultra-terrestrials, is that they talk telepathically to people. And so it's like, well, wouldn't that then be the same thing?
Essentially.
Isn't that the same thing? Right, it's the same thing.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's all kind of blurred together because we don't understand it. We don't know everything.
We don't know, right. There's some things that we just don't know. Well, and that's what we were saying about, we were talking about, me and Steve were talking about the periodic table and how many elements there are and how many elements have been added. And it's like, how can we decide what makes up life elementally if we don't even know what all the elements are? We can't, you know, we can't until we have those answers. We just know what we know now. And what we know now might be totally fucking wrong, you know, compared to how other things live or, you know, exist or be, and we just don't have any way to know that.
Right. Like, it'll make sense until we find this other element that comes into play that's like, oh, wait, so it actually wasn't this. It was actually what we just discovered.
Because when you think you know shit, you find out that
you don't
know shit. But other people have other things. You know, because I'm so new to this, I haven't really looked much into other people's gifts and, you know, things, other powers that people have, I guess is what we call them. Some people have just weird, extraordinary things, you know, just pick up a book of, you know, the Guinness World Records, you know, and you'll find all these people that have these amazing abilities that no normal person has. And, you know, like the sword swallowers, or, you know, there's like people that can like swallow shit and regurgitate it back up and stuff like that. I mean, it's a physical gift, but I can't do that. You know, you can't do that. The normal person can't do that. So, I mean, there are people. I think that everybody has something. I think that you can tap into things and make them something. But I think we all naturally, because you can't you can't be the master of everything. So I don't think that it's possible for you to have every gift. But I think that there's certain ones that you can tap into. I think being intuitive, I think mediumship or whatever it's called, I think those things you can draw out, because I think those are the next steps in the human evolution. And so, I think that we're kind of starting to get there. And I think that there's parts of your brain that probably work towards those things for the advantage of those things, and but in every regular person, they're just not there yet. I mean, they just haven't done anything to activate that part of themselves. And so I think it's possible to do so.
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of like different things that can come through, like our genetic makeup.
Yeah.
Like there's some people that are have more energy and can do high endurance stuff that most people can't, or there's like some, I forget the name of it, but it's a condition where your body doesn't block this specific hormone or something that causes you to be extremely muscular, even if you don't try.
Yeah.
You're just built stronger. It's just part of...
Well, like we talked about that one lady one time who doesn't... When we talked about our people who doesn't feel pain, even emotional pain. Yeah, that's... fuck, that's a superpower. That's amazing. Can you imagine? No, you can't. So, yeah, there is all kinds of stuff for whatever reason, that comes out in certain people, and they just know. And the only way to know, usually, like, these people ask them how they figured it out. They just figured it out one day,
Yeah.
There's no special story. There's no, I was bit by a spider and I'm Spider-Man. Like, that's not how it works. It just happens. You just find out and you're like, oh, this is... So I don't know why it tends to be like, people like you, your story and how you discovered tarot reading anyway. It's not like specifically just the tarot reading. It was like everything leading up to that point to make up to where you were. It was just divinely guided. And, and I feel like mine's been very divinely guided. This whole everything, whatever the hell you want to call it, has been very divinely guided. And it's kind of almost been forced on me. And I can either choose to use it or not. I'm not going to lose it if I don't, but I can either choose to use it or I'm not going to. Which is why I've been blocking out the things and been able to block out the things. But then why can't I block out some of the other things? I don't know. And I would think, and I don't know if I had this conversation with you or I had it with somebody recently talking about spirits, but it's like, maybe that's why I'm essentially haunted by one, is that, maybe he's just as surprised as I am that he can talk to me. And so therefore the only way that is going to be able to get what he needs to say out to these people is to continue to stick around and talk to me. I don't know if he's aware of me, and I don't know if he knows that I'm aware of him. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, there's like instances where like people will think they've seen a ghost or a spirit, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually like a part of them that is communicating with them, but they feel like it was a spirit or a ghost or an entity.
Yeah.
But it's actually just their subconscious connecting with their conscious
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
But in this weird, like, fucked up way because, probably because the person didn't work through it and it's just now manifesting in a different way. But it's all kind of weird how it all works, because like nobody's perception is the same. You might find people that are similar, but like if you call yourself a medium and you meet another medium, they might do it in a
completely different way. Right. And that's kind of what I'm finding. Like I was thinking, I was like, man, it'd be really nice to have like a medium mentor. But
so I guess like a medium would essentially be somebody that talks to dead people.
Yeah.
I mean, do they have to be dead? Could it be a spirit?
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. If that specific term is, I guess it's a lot that it's so very new for me, and something that I'm still not totally. I haven't totally accepted it yet.
Yeah. And I know exactly what you mean.
Right, and so it's like, I'm definitely getting there, but it's a lot because, like I said, then I have to accept certain realities that I never thought was what it was before. And so I have to completely change my perspective of it. But I've been trying to talk about it a little more openly because,
But people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Even the weirdos, they're like, bitch, okay, you're a little too weird right now.
Right. Yeah, it is. And it's weird. It is a strange thing. I mean, that's what I was telling Steve about it. And I'm like, this sounds crazy, but, we're going to try to evoke some spirits at the, because I don't know what else to say. Spirits, I don't know what to call them. It's just a placeholder for the moment until I decide. I mean, I could address them by name, but they'd have to tell me what it is first. So, but I don't know. It sounds crazy. And I mean, you'd be surprised how many people are accepting of it. Especially people that know me and know who I am, and they've talked to me and they know that I'm not fucking nuts.
Sometimes it's the people you least expect, and they've got their own shit. They're like, "Oh, thank God, I can finally talk to somebody about it." Happens all the time. It's crazy. It's like my one coworker. She's 40-something-year-old woman. Yeah. She's got kids. She went to college. She, has a job at a university. Mm-hmm. She just is a normal person. Not like in a bad way. I don't want to say that she's bland or boring, but like you look at her and she's not like somebody that would necessarily stand out like, oh, that person does some weird shit. But she's probably done the weirdest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. And it's weird to think about because it's like, it's not for any one person. Like, yeah, me and you are goth, and people kind of have this stigma
that we think that
oh, they're witches or Satanists or whatever. There's always some kind of judgment with it, but it's like it literally has nothing to do with it. Like I'm in like some groups and on Facebook for like tarot and stuff, and like there's some Christian tarot readers, and it blew my mind. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this exists? There's Christian witches.
Yeah, there is.
But you know how I feel about that. Any religion is witchcraft. Yeah, no matter what way you look at it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my the person that got me into witchcraft, she was a Christian. She said, "This has nothing to do. This is not my religion. This is my lifestyle. My religion is Jesus Christ." So, it was very interesting. So I learned that pretty early on that you could have both. But it is crazy. I mean, we need to normalize. But the thing is like, what sets that apart? What sets me apart saying that I'm talking to these entities from fucking demon sperm lady? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's like, oh, she's crazy. But it's like, why? What part of that makes her crazy? I mean, like, she is crazy. But
but is she though?
Yeah, girl. She says that witches come to people in the middle of the night and have sex with them to impregnate them.
Well, just because you're a witch and I'm a witch and we don't do that doesn't mean it don't happen. I'm just saying. I don't doubt anything.
I mean, I didn't know I was allowed to as a witch. I mean, if I knew that, fuck, I'd have impregnated people a long time ago.
Well, sometimes it's more about like symbology. It's like the sexual demons, they exist, and you might have sex with a person that isn't a sexual demon, but they have a sexual demon that's attached to them.
Yeah, that's
true. Like you pick up on people's traumas and whatever they're going through. So that's why it's as somebody that takes these kind of energies very seriously, like you're opening yourself up very intimately to somebody else that has a lot of negative energy, and to think that it has no effect on you is completely foolish.
It's just that she's perceiving it differently for her.
Yeah, I don't know. She might be crazy. I don't know.
Right. But so how do you know when people are crazy and people aren't?
Right. I mean, it's all just kind of like I mean, if you think about it, because it's like energy. We can't see it, we can't touch it, but we know it's there. It's kind of like that, but there's really no like test for it, like ego, like
right.
You know, it's not.
There's no measure. You can't prove it to anybody else.
Right. You can't say, oh, you have an ego that's 10 centimeters. You know, like I don't know. Like
that's what we need, an ego tester.
Yeah, it's all
mine would
weird.
be out of this world.
Maybe, probably.
It's not even out of this world, just not of this world. We've never seen an ego like this before. Yeah, well, that explains a lot. It's huge. It's the best.
Very generous.
I got the best, the biggest ego you've ever seen. Yeah, I mean, you're right, though. I guess that's my ego being so critical of the crazy people.
Well, I mean, if you think about it this way, time, it doesn't exist.
Right. Not
it's
really.
something that we've all agreed upon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't...
It's just a point of measure.
Right. It's a concept that we have created to make sense of our reality.
Right.
So we understand because of time that we only have so long. But if we didn't have that structure, you know, we would, you know, think whatever. Like, I don't know what we would think.
Isn't that crazy? Because you can't even perceive not having time. You just can't. It's not.
So that's like, you know, the evolution of the mind,
for
the
us,
spirit, and the body. You know, it all, like, the further we go, the more complicated it gets and the harder it is to look back on. It's like you can't remember stuff from when you're a baby. Well, there are some people that can.
There are some people that can.
Superpower, but you know, it's I don't know, that how you were talking about like the timeline and the dimensions and stuff like that. That book, Seth Speaks, that I always talk about, you need to buy it because he talks about kind of stuff. And like the room that we're in does not exist.
Okay.
We've created it. It's something that we have essentially agreed upon. And how that works is through the collective consciousness. So if I say, this is oak, and I show you a picture,
it's oak.
That's oak. Yeah. Okay. This color is red. That's red. So that then takes away our ability to see beyond that.
Right.
So if you actually showed me blue my whole life, it was red.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And then somebody told me that it was blue, I'd be like, what the fuck?
That's not. Yeah, that's not what it is.
It's that same thing. We have this collective consciousness that comes together because we are trying to define everything around us. And
make sense of it.
That's going to be our downfalls because not everything can be made sense of. Some things are just meant to be. Like, you're supposed to experience it. You don't need to necessarily understand it. You don't need to know everything about it. And, you know, that just comes with human nature, being inquisitive.
And maybe that's true. I refuse to believe that that's true. I want to find out the answers. And that's what I'm doing. You know, because again, it is, you know, again, another thing I have to accept. If we're talking about fourth dimensional creatures, well, we can't perceive them. We can't. And if that's what it is, and they can contact us and tell us, listen, we're here. You just can't perceive us the way that we are. So, yeah, I mean, if that's just the way that it is, then I would at least like to know that much.
Well, I don't explain that very well either.
Yeah.
Like, the book talks about it completely different because it's a channeled entity that's explaining something
Right.
It's hard to perceive.
Right.
I don't even know how to explain it, but, you know, whatever.
Well, that's my job. I'm trying to, you know, not just learn new things. I'm trying to also spread this message to everybody else. One problem that I have with this stuff is that, God, it can be boring as fuck. It's so goddamn boring sometimes. They just don't explain it in a simple way that simple people can understand. They're explaining it to people that already have some type of understanding of it. And it's not very effective in getting the message out. So,
or it's just like the same shit worded differently.
Right, but still boring. So
and still doesn't take you anywhere that you already aren't.
Right, and so it's like, that's another thing I would like to accomplish with it is, again, just having people being able to understand the message. It is hard to explain without explaining all of it and in scientific terms, but I'm sure there's an easier way. I'm pretty happy with my, the way that I've come to with my cartoon explanation. I think that it explains that part pretty good. But, there's still more. There's still more that I have to be able to, break down in very simple terms to look appealing to everybody. So that's what I'm trying to do. But, it's a work in progress. Like I said, I'm still learning so much about all of this with myself, and, I'll get there. So here we are. But I think for now, I'm done with Point Pleasant. I mean, I don't think that I have a reason to go back for now. And, I think I'm going to start exploring other places and seeing where that goes, because I do have other leads to go. I've got a couple of reasons to go back for some very specific things, but as far as just kind of going and just to feel it out, see what happens, I don't think I need to do that anymore. So, and that's another one of those, I think, just messages from the universe. So we'll see what happens. But anything else you want to add to people and their abilities and their gifts, or
not really?
Anything we should talk about? Okay then. All right, guys. Well, we'll be back next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.